Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery, and today I'm excited to have Alex Twigg, who's the founder of Appeggio, which is a SaaS no-code with an experience as a service platform built to be enterprise grade but simple enough for everyone to use. Um, Alex has been a CEO and co-founder or advisor in multiple digital banks and fintechs across the globe, including Egg, UBank, Judo Bank, Trust Bank, and Alex Bank. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you very much, Rohit. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So you've had quite a journey. Before the call we discussed that you born and brought up in UK, you worked in US, and now you're in Australia. But how was the life in the UK? And you had a very humble start in starting off in a bank. How was the experience there?
Oh, look, the UK was my home for 40 years. I was brought up there in the Midlands. I left school at 18, went to work for the local NatWest branch of now the Royal Bank of Scotland. Literally, I was the tea boy. I used to have to make the tea for the whole branch staff twice a day, every day. And you worked in those days. You worked your way up from the bottom. That was it. I mean, I actually credit it with um, a lot of the success that I've had, if you know the limited success that I've had over the years, because it was an incredible. I call it an apprenticeship, right? It's like for banking, you had to do every single job in the bank. I used to get rotated around those every 3 to 6 months. So you learn everything from, I worked my way up to the counter, and that's like, that's the old days. You did everything from standing orders, direct debits. We used to do those manually at one point in time, and then you'd go foreign exchange, securities, investments, personal lending, business lending, small business lending, and you'd go investments, securities, the whole process. On top of that, in those days, you were the only way to get on in the banking world was to take your banking exams, the Chartered Institute banking exams. I used to go to college 3 nights a week to do those. And I've the stuff that I've learned through that process has served me brilliantly well over the years. There isn't probably a day that goes past that I don't draw on some piece of knowledge I learned through that process. And I think it's a real shame that that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Um, you know, for most bankers, branches are now really just glorified shops. You're drawn into the technical elements of banking that I used to learn about. Most people never get to see anymore. And most large banks are really silos.
Yeah.
You start off in marketing, or you start off in retail set lending, or and that's where you stay, right? It's very rare that you move across an organization. And for me, that was I've been really lucky. I've been involved now in helping or building 6 banks around the world. I don't think anybody else has done that many. But the real gift that you get from that is you have to understand the end to end of a bank.
Mm.
Everything from your risk and regulatory reporting at the bottom, all the way through to your frontline sales funnel and everything in between. And there's not many people that can experience that, because there aren't that many banks either small enough or to start from square one that actually get to see that and get to make that happen. So those people that do, in my view, are exceptionally lucky, because it is a really interesting process. And I think there's another story there, but an interesting process to see how that all works and how a bank actually makes money. Because we've all seen neobanks and startup banks, even big ones that are failing to make money. And that's predominantly driven because they don't understand, or they haven't designed the way they built their bank around the economics that are required to make a bank successful.
Mm. Correct. Interesting. And not many people know I started off my career as a stockbroker. And I remember, you have to take so many different exams. And you got to really, have that sort of hustle to work in that sort of environment. Do you think the Gen Z or the younger generation are not putting that sort of effort? Or, I understand, every generation says that the younger generation is not working hard enough. But do you think, what's been your experience? Do you think the Gen Zs or the millennials aren't putting that kind of hard work, or are they, their working style is quite different from others?
I think, I think there's, like all of our generations, there is a segment that put in the work and there's a segment that don't. And that's that. I don't think that's changed. I think we saw that, and we see that today in the younger generations. What I think is different is I don't think that the today's youngsters have the frameworks in place and the support mechanisms for large organizations to invest in them in the same way that they did in us. And I'm not saying that that's a thing that's been caused by we've as a generation we've not wanted to do that. I think business has meant that everything is about cost cutting, everything is about thin margins, and we have prioritized or deprioritized those things. And I think it's a big shame, and I think we have to try and reclaim that a little bit if we can, because I think we're not going to see, particularly in an AI future,
Right.
where the AI will pick up 80 to 90% of the run-of-the-mill tasks.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to, we were having this conversation earlier on about AI, right? If the whole thing about prompt engineering and knowing what to ask for and knowing the quality of the response you get out. If you as an individual haven't been through that learning process and sort of made that investment, then you're not going to understand. You're not going to know. You're just going to trust the AI, and that's where we could run into some significant issues.
Got it. And Alex, you've had quite experience in the banking sector in the UK, as well as in Australia and in the US. How has your leadership style changed over the time? Since you've had worked in different segments and different leadership roles. Has your leadership style changed since you moved from one continent to another?
I don't think it's changed by continent, but it definitely has changed over the years. Uh, I mean, I always knew I didn't fit into traditional banking from the moment I walked into the door, right? Yeah, back then, for all the good things I've talked about, it had a lot of bad things as well. So don't get me wrong. It was a very, a very structured, rigid culture. You did what you were told. Stupid things like I wasn't allowed to unbutton my top button of my shirt on the hottest days of the year because and you'd pretty much get fired if you even thought about rolling up your sleeves, right? That would be a
Oh,
and so that culture of sort of command and control culture that existed in the early days of banking when I was there, definitely I raged against that, and I found you know, I found my place, and I found a different world when I moved. My first sort of big move was I went to join the team at UBank,
Right.
um, and found a culture there that was entirely different. You know, it
Mm.
was all about, you could wear whatever you wanted to the office as long as it was clean and decent. You could wear
Mm.
it, right? That was,
Nice.
you know, the office was a place to have fun as much as it was to work, right? You know,
Yeah.
when did that happen? um, you know, and people were allowed to express themselves and have opinions, and you know, there was debates, and you know, we were about, I was, the executive team there, Paul Grattan, Mark Nancaro, Mike Smith. You know, they created a culture that was so radically different from anything that I'd experienced in the past. Um, you know, and it showed me what the art of the possible was. It showed me how things could be. And you know, the team there, they achieved amazing things, right? Things that never could have been achieved in other organizations, you know, to literally change the banking landscape in the UK with, you know, in 6 years, uh, was a feat that I think, you know, it was hard to replicate, right? But that for me was my second big learning experience, you know,
Mm.
because they took, you know, from a cultural perspective, from a leadership perspective, from a technology perspective. I mean, you know, they were trying to, you know, we were in the dot-com boom at that time, right? You know,
Yeah.
the team, you know, they were doing things with technology that had never been done before, right? They were, you know, and certainly never been done in banking.
Mm.
Um, but you know, and this I think led to my change in management leadership style. You know, took me out of that, you know, what I'd had drilled into me, you know, that sort of, you know, although I didn't like it, you know, that sort of command and control culture was the one that I was used to. You know, with Egg, having the ability to, you know, understand what real leadership actually was,
Right.
right? Not good management, but real leadership. The real change, you know, and enabling teams to and empowering teams to go and doing great things. That was the big change. US again was very different. That's just different from, you know, from a you know, a very English gent going to the US, and you know, being in the middle of US corporate culture as I
Yeah.
was, you know, working with some of the biggest banks in the world over there. You know, they very much were still in that command and control mode at that time, and they were very much um, uh, had that sort of American undertone of culture as well that came with it. You know, in one way, being an English gent was actually quite liberating because it meant I could probably get away with stuff that, you know, that the American folk couldn't. You know, I was allowed to be quirky and different.
Oh, nice.
And that was a lot of fun. But you know, we always, you know, you joke about, you know, being separated by the same language.
Yeah.
Um, right? That's absolutely true. I mean, I for the first 6 months of being in the US, I walked out of meetings thinking, "You guys didn't understand a word I said, did you?" And you know, they'd sit there and they'd nod really politely and they'd go, "Yeah, that's great, that's great." And I'm sitting there going, "You don't know, you haven't got it. You really don't know what I'm saying." And you know, it took me 6 months to sort of work out this sort of what I used to jokingly refer to as the real-time translation engine. So I'd translate from English to American, you know, in my head before I used to say things. And that I think that was a big eye opener for me, actually. Having that uh, you know that first real understanding or experience that you have to adjust your style
Yeah.
and your content based upon just those cultural norms and cultures that you go to. And for me, I was brought up as a kid. Everything I watched on TV was from America, right? So I assumed I was American.
Yeah.
I could have assimilated there and then, but you can't, right? And I think that that was a big lesson for me, and I used that when I came to Australia as well. The way that I came to Australia and the way that I sort of tried to assimilate into Australian culture, try to pick up the language. Even the nuances in language in Australia are different. Um, and that helped me no end. It was a huge help to me. Brought me up the curve much faster. Brought with me, luckily when I came to Australia, I mean, again, the team that I joined here, they, wanted to be much more like the egg culture than the Citibank culture, right? So that was the mission. I came to help originally help launch UBank in Australia,
Nice.
which was NAB's sort of digital arm. And so they were looking to change the whole culture, way of doing things, approach, technology, sort of replicate some of the stuff that we sort of tried to achieve at Egg.
Nice.
So that was great. And so again, sort of my leadership style at that point, I found myself in a position where the guys and the team leadership team at Egg sort of must have felt themselves in, right? And tried to role model some of that behavior very strongly and adopt a lot of those practices and make those work. And then still on the leadership style thing, I then went through from sort of my UBank days. I became CEO of that organisation. We took that business from sort of PowerPoint to the 9th largest bank in Australia, which was a lot of fun.
Right.
Then went off to the Woolworths Group, which is the largest supermarket chain here in Australia. Think of it like Tesco's or Sainsbury's in the UK, or Walmart in the US, and to try and help them build a digital banking operation as well. That didn't come off. That was because they had other business issues that they needed to sort out, and they didn't get the priority. So that was interesting, but that very much was an organisation in transition. When I joined Woolworths, they were very much back in the 80s command and control culture. Just after I joined, they got a new group CEO who was trying to change that and trying to make that much more like what you'd see at an Egg back in the UK. But that was a very, very tough transition for them at the time. From a leadership perspective, I had to draw on both of those past experiences and cultures to work within that environment.
Right.
And then lastly, sorry, I'll let you butt in there, Rohit. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's a super interesting journey that you have had. Since you started off from the bottom at NatWest, I've done my master's from B school here in the UK. I was wondering, do you believe people are born CEOs, or do you think people can be taught to be CEOs? And some of this um, education that you get in B schools is relevant for people to, or the training which happens in companies is relevant for people to become the next CEOs or the business leaders.
Great question. Look, I think the tools that and this is, I mean, I never went to a business school like that. I don't have an MBA. I don't, but the sort of education that I did has all been, in the back bedroom at night school, right?
Yeah.
So I've met and worked with an awful lot of people there that have, right?
No.
And the thing that I would take away from that is they are very bright.
Right.
Yeah, they are very, very bright. They have, they have been taught a lot of theory, and they're exceptionally well read, and they can think about businesses at a strategic level really well. And some of them have got great, just like everybody else, there's groups of these, right? There's some of them that have got great leadership capabilities and can bring teams along with them.
Right.
But they also miss the school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And they miss coming up through the ranks of organizations, and knowing what that's like, and feeling what that's like. Because most people that come out of business school, they come in at the halfway up an organization minimum, right? Sometimes they come in at 3/4 of the way up an organization. So, and in large enterprise organizations like banks, that's a very, very different experience.
Yeah.
So, I think you've, like everything else, right? You've got to have a level of diversity in teams that you build. So, to come back to your original question, can CEOs be taught, or do they have to learn? I think the answer is either work, but you end up as a very different CEO at the end of the process, right? And you generally end up with very different teams around you as a process. And I think what you've got to be really careful of, and I need to be as careful of this as anybody else, is that whole process of surrounding yourself with people that are like you.
Right.
Right. Diversity of thought, for me, is one of the biggest lessons I've learned through my career, and having that at the table with you is the most important thing, because I find, or have found, you can 99 times out of 100, any group of people can be 80% right.
Right.
But it takes a really diverse group of people to be 90% right. And it's that last bit where the magic happens. And if you're in a great market environment, everything's going for you, everything's working well, 80% right's fine. Right, that's good.
Yeah.
When it's going the other way, you want 90%.
Yeah. So, right. And yeah, you worked in the banking sector for such a long time, and then you made a shift to software, focusing on no code platform for software development. How did that transition happen, and what gap did you see in the market that you wanted to fill?
Yeah, look, another great question. Look, I've had a career which has sort of spanned this weird banking technology world, right? So, my dad, I credit my dad with a lot of stuff, but my dad was an electronic engineer. He built our first computer on the dining room table when I was about 8 years old. I taught myself to code out of a book off the back of that. Then promptly became a banker. Don't know why that happened, but that's the way it worked. Then got a weird secondment into IT at one of my roles for 6 months. Ended up staying for 6 years, and ended up running the being involved in running the year 2000 program, first transactional website. This is pre this is dot-com boom stuff, right? Then going to Egg, and getting even more into the technology things. Did more learning in the back bedroom. Did a software engineering course from the Open University, and so technology has always been in my blood. So I've always been a banker and a technologist simultaneously. So when I joined Egg, sorry, not Egg, when I joined UBank, that was used both of those skills to bring that bank to fruition. And then I was actually the CIO of Judo Bank, which is probably the most successful one of the banks that I was involved in, and where we looked to try and actually change the whole technology roadmap landscape, right? So Judo was about, and I'll go into a little bit of depth here because it then moves on to the story for Appeggio. But Judo was designed from day one to be the first born in the cloud bank. So we bolted together over 50 software as a service systems to create an end-to-end banking platform. Didn't employ a single developer, didn't own a single server, and we did that in 18 months, right? So this was in the as SaaS was becoming a thing, right? So and what it meant was that we had the ability as a startup business. It was fantastic because we didn't have massive capital investments to make. We could make revenue follow costs under a SaaS model. We could leverage. I mean, I'm a bank, but we were a bank. As CIO, I couldn't afford the entire floor of security architects that any other bank in the world has, right? But SaaS gave me the ability to leverage off the investments of Microsoft, AWS, and all those other SaaS players out there that were putting all those huge investments in. So effectively, I could make Judo technology punch well above its weight, right, by using that. So that was the model. Everybody said, you're a bank, the regulators are never going to let you do that. But in actual fact, the regulators are really good. What they said to us is, you come to us with understanding what the risks are for SaaS, and having controls for those risks. Most people though come to us wanting to go to SaaS, and they say they bring their old on-prem control models, right? And we obviously say no. Right, and so we did that, and we were really, the team did an amazing job of pulling that all together. We had some phenomenal partners, and we built that platform in 18 months. But the thing with Judo was, and the reason why that worked so successfully was because Judo was all about face-to-face, high quality banker customer relationships in the small business space, right? About putting back into the ecosystem all of the stuff that the other banks have taken out for the last 10 years, right? So in Australia, I'm sure it's the same in the UK and the US. If you're a small business and you want to borrow money, at best you can phone a contact center. But really what those customers want, is they want face-to-face banking relationships with somebody that can help them and do stuff, and the credit process had gone way into the back of the organization and been centralized, so bankers weren't able to make credit decisions with customers, and all that stuff, right? So, but what that meant was, from a technology perspective, it was great because we weren't trying to build a digital bank or a digital facing bank. We were having a people facing bank, and we wanted to digitize everything behind the banker. So take out all the costs behind the banker. Now, it's a very long stretch, and we never quite got there. But the original vision was, a banker should be able to go to a customer's premises, talk to them, walk the floor, look at the books, agree a deal, go back to their car in the car park, complete everything they needed to on their iPhone, and send the docs to the customer for signing before they left. Right?
Right.
Completely changed that model. Right? So that we digitized everything behind the banker and took all the costs out of the organization. And that, well, you know, to a greater and lesser extent, that worked. But what we could do that was because we didn't have to have the world's best digital banking interface, because the banker was the world's best banking digital interface, right? So that enabled us from a SaaS perspective to take all of the vanilla user experience options from the SaaS vendors, because, you know, they're all good enough, and we didn't have to change them. Because as soon as you start changing them, you end up in the worst paradigm, because now you're doing software development and SaaS.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have control. You've got all the costs and change requirements for doing SaaS. You've leveraged, you know, you've leveraged up actually your change management problem, because now you've got to manage the vendor as well as your own teams. So you get the worst of both worlds. You get all the costs associated with software development, and you get the loss of control that you get with SaaS. But because we could take the vanilla versions, that was fine, and that worked really well for us. But what that left me thinking about, and what left James and I, my co-founder at Appeggio, you know, he's the ultimate propeller head and brains of the operation. But what it meant was, from my perspective, was if we could create effectively what we call experience as a service, so enable you to create digital experiences both for web and for native mobile devices through a SaaS platform, and then orchestrate over the headless APIs, because all of those SaaS platforms that we talked about have now, everybody's trying to become a headless SaaS platform. They all produce an API catalog. So if you can orchestrate over those APIs and control your digital experience without having to develop it, that becomes something quite new and quite different, right? So, and that's how we coined the phrase experience as a service, which meant that, you know, CIOs could keep their guard dogs and razor wire around their APIs and focus all of their scarce resources, because there just aren't enough developers in the world, right? We're not trying to do developers out of a job, there just aren't enough, right? And that's only going to get worse. They put their scarce resources into their APIs, which is where you know, all of the business IP should live, right? And if you're thinking of this from a business strategy perspective, you should be spending all of your money putting your IP into your APIs. There's too many I's in that sentence, but you see where I'm coming from. And then allowing your business community, who have the contact with your customers and are trying to change their experiences in a competitive environment, to actually build and manage the digital experiences for those customers based on those APIs. And that's really where Appeggio comes from. It's, you know, how do we give non-technical product owners and product managers the ability to build enterprise-grade digital customer experiences that orchestrate over either an organization's, or most prominently in today's world, you know, an ecosystem of APIs to create end-to-end digital experiences. And that's the transition, and that's why we I took the leap into SaaS.
Got it. And you would know, you know, what would be my next question would be, you know, about AI, because I think there are a lot of interesting technologies which are AI technology which are coming out. I think a lot of people are using chat GPTs to you know, create the next code. But my question is, do you think AI would make you know, jobs easier for non-technical people to create products? And do you think, you know, a lot of engineers would lose their jobs in the next coming years because of AI and these no-code solutions?
Oh, fantastic question. And to, you know, to be upfront, you know, I love AI. It's one of my, you know, I play with it just as much as everybody else does, right?
Yeah.
So this is this is the problem with AI that I see, and this is how I think about it from an enterprise or a perspective, which is what every LinkedIn post that you see today about AI is about let the latest prompt cheat sheet, right? Right. And that's generally because you've got to know what you want to ask for to get a result from an AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Bard or any of the others, right? You've got to have that knowledge to know what to ask for.
Yeah.
Now this sort of plays back to my earlier commentary around, we're not training people like we used to, so they don't have the knowledge to know what to ask for. And then so you work out your best prompt, you put it in, and you get an output. And the problem then is, unless you understand, you've got the skills and the knowledge, you don't know whether that output is correct.
Yeah. Or
you can't QA it, right? So you have to have a level of trust. Now, comes back to the 80-20 rule. For 8% of the time it's probably fine. For 20% of the time it's definitely not going to be fine. And we've all had those experiences with ChatGPT where you go, really, but I know that's wrong. Right. So for me, AI is certainly in its current form is an efficiency generator. Right, it enables people that have skills to become more efficient in doing what they do. If I'm a developer, and I've got to write 50 similar JSON classes this afternoon, am I going to go back and do code everything by hand like I used to, or am I just going to go to ChatGPT and say, copy this format, replace these things, and give me 50 versions, right? That's what I'm going to do, right? It's simple. From a business perspective, from a non-developer perspective, boy, would I have loved to have it when I was writing endless PowerPoints, right? Please provide me with a background to X. Bish, it's brilliant. You can make yourself really productive. But from a pure code perspective, what that means is, there's still a lot of uncertainty there, and there's tools out there that will, I can sit there and I can type, build me a website that's green and blue that will make me work as a doctor, right? And it will produce you, right? But generally speaking, it has the same problem, which is it produces you a functional output. What it doesn't produce for you is a non-functional output. So is it secure? Is it scalable? Is it resilient? Can it be deployed to the technology, to the cloud? All of that stuff, right? Which is all of the non-functional components that most people don't actually know exist, let alone know to ask for, right? I mean, James and I have been doing this collectively for 60 years, and we've been burnt a lot. I mean, you only have to look at the paper every day for the latest cyber attack or the latest project that failed or the huge write down of some monster investment project that didn't go well. And 99 times out of 100, it's not because of the functional requirements that people have asked for. It's all of the non-functional components that people forgot about. And so what we've done with Appeggio is we've taken all of those hard-earned experiences and all that hardcore software engineering and built that into the platform, so that when you create something in Appeggio, you're guaranteed that you get that as an outcome. Now, where I see, and for visual components, if you're building something visually, a natural language environment is probably isn't intuitive, right? People want to draw stuff, people want to visually see stuff. So that's where you have a visual editor to do your visual building of stuff. Appeggio is created in three sections effectively. There's the visual editor.
Right.
I call it the visual studio for PowerPoint users. Right. It enables non-technical folk to build front ends. Off the back of that, we create a meta definition of if you like, a mathematical model of what you've created visually. And then from that mathematical model, we generate the code at the back end. Now, this is where I think AI will really be exciting, because if you could, as a business user or a non-technical user, create that digital experience for customers, create that website or that app visually, allow a no-code tool like Appeggio to write you high-quality enterprise-grade code out the back. Right. But then when you come to the things that aren't visual, like, tell me how many customers I saw last Thursday between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, right? In the old days, that would require quite a bit of experience and, SQL to write a report to be able to do that, or you'd have to ship it off into some reporting tool and all that stuff that comes along with it, right? Right. What you could do now with a tool like Appeggio is go, literally write that statement into let's call it the natural language editor. And because Appeggio has written the code in the right way and created your databases, enterprise grade and all that sort of stuff, it can actually produce you that report. Right? And so you now get the blend of capabilities, and that the output is correct. So you don't have to understand what to ask for in the first place, and you don't have to be able to QA what comes out the back. And for me, I think if we can solve those two problems with AI, we'll actually really generate the benefit from AI.
Got it. And Alex, I want to understand about customer acquisition, since you work in companies like Egg, UBank, Judo. How does customer acquisition work for you when you're trying to onboard new clients, and even for Appeggio? What are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen founders make when it comes to our customer acquisition as well?
Cool. Look, so let's break this down into two bits. There's marketing and attracting customers, and then there's onboarding customers. Yeah. So I'll focus on the second part first. So this for me was the game changer. And where founders need to think differently. So most founders come from, they have a historic knowledge of a particular business or segment. Yeah. And they will bring that with them to their new venture. And that's good because they know all about that ecosystem that they're trying to do. But it's bad because they know all about that ecosystem that they need to do. And to be able to do things differently, you need to be able to think about things differently. Right. So back in, it would have been 2008, I was asked to do a presentation in Singapore about onboarding customers and how I thought differently about customer engagement through digital channels. And what I actually came up with was I coined this phrase, invisible banking. Now, people always look at me a bit strange when I say invisible banking, and the reason there's sort of three tenets to invisible banking, which is tenet number one, which is I'm a 35-year banker, and even I don't find banking interesting. Right? I've never met a single person that gets up in the morning going, "Oh, I'm going banking." Right? It is boring as. right? It's
Yeah.
not, there is nothing exciting about banking at all, right?
Mm.
But as an industry, we spend billions of dollars a year collectively trying to make an exciting experience out of banking.
Mm.
And it's just impossible. You can't do it, right? The second tenet of invisible banking is that banking is actually really important, right?
Yeah.
It's whole economies rise and fail off the back of banking, right? People's lives rise and fail off the back of banking, right? If it doesn't work, things shut down, right? It's and you've never heard anybody say, "Oh yeah, give me that mortgage approval next year," right? It's not, that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Which brings you straight on to the third principle of invisible banking, which banking is urgent. It's always urgent,
Mm.
right? Nobody ever wants it tomorrow, right? The outcome is always required today, and more often yesterday, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Now, so anything that's boring, important, and urgent, because we're all human, we all do exactly the same thing. We always leave it to the last minute, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't actually want to do it, right? We know we have to, we know we should do. We always leave it to the last minute, and we always try and get somebody else to do it for us.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Now, but as I said, we as bankers, we spend billions of dollars a year trying to make something that nobody wants to do sexy, right? Not going to happen. So this is, but actually, if you think about most things in banking, they're not difficult, right? So what we need to do is not make things easier for people to do. It's stop them having to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what you saw back in the sort of 2000s in retail banking was you saw, the way that people got, or the way that banks got around their huge complexity that they have in their organizations, because banking is a really complex thing, is they put private bankers in front of customers. And so the customer just rings the private banker and says, "Oh, just sort this out for me," right?
Yeah.
Right? And then the bank has to go and sort it out, right? That's a perfect example of invisible banking, right? I don't see it. I just ring somebody, it happens, it goes away, right?
Yeah.
Then with move forward 10 years, digital banking. Digital banking was all about making banking so simple that you could do it yourself, but doing it DIY on your phone, whatever it was, right? But the problem with that is it dumbs everything down,
Yeah.
right? So you don't actually get the outputs that you want. So what you've got to do is create this. This is why invisible banking is about making sure that your processes are only those ones that people find useful
Right.
and valuable and want to do. And I have used that concept across everything that I've ever been involved in. And this is why people, when they come to new things and they think about onboarding and bringing their customers on, I always talk about people try and make it invisible. Try to make it so they don't have to do it.
Mm.
Right? And that requires, though, a very different thought process, because as all of us, we have ways that things are done.
Right.
And so the innovation that has to occur is find the ways that you can change the process, change your product, change your platform, change whatever you need to do so that you can allow these things not to be needed, or so that you can do them so that people don't have to do them.
Mm.
And for me, that's the biggest success factor that is required for most startup organizations, that ability to make what they do actually invisible.
Mm.
From a market, that's the back end of the. So to get people into your funnel, to answer your sort of come back to your original question, then a good friend of mine who's a sort of small scale VC, he keeps saying to me, "I forgot the golden rule again, Alex." distribution, distribution, distribution.
Yeah, true. That's the key.
You said it was a brilliant platform. It was fantastic. I love the founders. It was fantastic, but I forgot to ask about the distribution. And it, for every founder, it doesn't matter how good your platform is, how good your product is, unless you've got the distribution, unless you understand how to make that funnel work, unless you get whatever works for you, you have to make it work. And I think I read the other day, probably the sort of second biggest rule there is, try and make one distribution channel working is better than not working.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, it's really easy as founders to go after, digital and direct and partnerships and all these other stuff, and try and make this huge, great, distribution funnel. But I think probably the second lesson I've learned over the years after distribution is make one distribution channel work. Focus on one, get it working. Then you can always go after more if you want to, but one is much better than none.
Got it. And just to add on to that, I had Rob Walling who came on my podcast, and he said like the 5 distribution channels like ads, content, partnerships, outreach, and that is something which a SaaS founder should focus on. Is there one specific distribution channel that somebody should start off with, or as you mentioned, you should focus on one distribution channel, or do you think somebody can start off with all these 5 distribution channels, but focus on 1 or 2 at the same time?
Oh, I think the answer is it depends on what your SaaS platform is, right? If your SaaS platform is very much a B2C direct proposition, then I would be looking at your direct social channels, your influencers. That's where I'd be going from a distribution perspective.
Sure.
If your platform is more focused at enterprise or corporates or business users, then I'd be going down the distribution partner perspective,
Right.
the partnership, because it's just hard to sell to large business, right? You can be 9 months in the procurement process and somebody gets a new job and then you start again, right? It's just hard, right? So you've got to try and get leverage the existing relationships that those distribution partners have, create a network effect around your platform, and have 1,000 conversations going on every day as opposed to the one that you can book and meet with somebody with.
Got it. And Alex, I quickly want to do the top 3. What's your favorite business book?
Well, you mentioned it by accident at the beginning. It was 0 to 1. How you bridge that gap is most definitely all should be compulsory reading for any founder.
No, absolutely. We'll put that in the show notes. And if you could go back in time when you started working in startups, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done things differently?
Oh, look, and this is probably not something people will expect me to say, but startup, even entrepreneurs, the amount of ambiguity, stress, uncertainty that goes on in your life is immeasurable. And even if you can handle that, it's not that easy for your partner and your family to handle that.
Sure.
Helping my family to understand much better the strains and the level of ambiguity, uncertainty, and the pressures that puts on you, and therefore you reflect onto family life is enormous. And I would get founders to think very carefully about that and think how they are going to manage that as much as they manage their business.
Right. And what's your favorite online tool? For example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, anything other than Appeggio?
I am a massive fan of Grammarly.
Family. Okay.
Yeah, particularly since they've done their recent updates with AI. It is for me an incredible tool, absolutely incredible tool. Massive productivity boost. It's a huge, makes you, I can be firing off 100 emails a day. In pre-Grammarly, the grammar, punctuation, and content might not have been perfect, but post Grammarly and certainly post AI Grammarly, the quality has gone up tenfold.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I've used Grammarly. I think it's a really useful tool. We'll put that in show notes. And Alex, what is the best way people can know about Appeggio and know more about you?
Oh, look, it's come to appeggio.com, APPEGGIO. You can come up there and sign up for the early sign up for the public beta. That would be fantastic. You can follow us on LinkedIn. That would be even better. You can always get hold of me if you want more information at alex@appeggio.com.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put that in our show notes. Alex, thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
I did too, Ro. It was a real pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.